All right, welcome back to the channel. Forgive my tardiness and my absence, and also please forgive my voice. I know it's been a while. It's been nearly a year since I actually uploaded for this chapter. But as I said when I began, I am committed to finishing this book, and so no matter how long it takes me, I will finish it. And perhaps I've been moving through my own spiral. So we're going to be picking up where we left off in part 3, and this will be the last part for Pentad. I'm saying that now. But it would be interesting if it ended up being 5 parts for the Pentad chapter. So, we left off with this highlighted sentence: an Archimedean spiral's curvature gets broader as it widens, no section being identical with any other. So my voice feels scratchy, but I hope that, I don't know, I'm going to try to get rid of the scratch, but maybe the deeper tone may actually sound a little better. And if neither sound okay to you, then turn the volume down. Maybe that'll help a little bit. All right, let's get started. Change without change. An object swirling around a whirlpool remains pointed in the same direction. These characteristics are the open secret of balance, of animal horns, seashells, plants, and galaxies. For example, as a chambered nautilus creature grows larger, the gland that exudes shell material also grows, building a widening shell. The shell's golden spiral shape maintains the same center of gravity in any size, and so the nautilus need not relearn how to balance itself as it matures. The same is true for the growing horns of a ram. As the horn material accumulates, growing larger and more massive, its golden spiral maintains the same center of gravity. Thus the ram need not adjust its posture throughout life to uphold the growing horns. Similarly, the tree that puts out branches and leaves in spiral staircases around their respective eyes can get enormously large, yet the tree always balances no matter how massive it grows to be. In a whelk shell, the spiral's eye is the central column that gives the whole shell outstanding strength. Gothic and Renaissance artists used local shells to design spiral staircases of great strength. The well-known sound of the ocean heard in a spiral seashell is actually the magnified echo of the blood pulsing in the listener's own ear. Wow. Divers observe that schools of fish, like groups of birds and swarms of insects, regroup in the pattern of a whirlpool spiral. Some say that this is because they are following the unseen, swirling water or air. Whirling water or air. Others maintain that each individual fish, bird, and insect is like one cell, one part of a single organism, and they are linked as one energy field. And we see the image here showing the leaves of a plant form a continuous spiral around its stem eye. The balanced structure of a whirlpool. Wherever the spiral appears in plants, animals, or solar systems, it ensures dynamic balance during inevitable growth and dissolution. Learn to identify and then contemplate the eye in natural spiral phenomena. Another property unique to this type of spiral is reflected in an alternate name for it, the equiangular spiral, coined by the French mathematician and philosopher René Descartes in 1638. Any line drawn from the pole to the curve cuts it at the exact same or equal angle all around. The flight of a fly illustrates this. A fly's eye is made of thousands of tiny hexagonal, and I can't see under there. Oh, I'm going to assume it says parts, hexagonal parts or facets. It sees the same tiny image in each facet instead of one large image as we do. As the fly approaches an object, the image shifts slightly in each facet. In response, the fly shifts its body so that the image remains fixed in its original place in each facet. As the distance to the object becomes shorter, the angle of approach remains constant. Thus, the path produced is made up of segments whose arcs are identical, only different in size, tracing the accumulative golden spiral. And then we have an image of a fly as it approaches an object along a spiral path due to the structure of its eyes and nervous system. And you can see that all of the angles there have the same measure. Excuse me. The next image, we have fish, tortoise, rabbit, and other vertebrate embryos that begin life as unfurling spirals. And then we have an both those images are everything in embryo form. So that looks like a human fetus there. Acupuncture makes use of the way the spiral human embryo resembles the spiral of the ear. Like other vertebrates, creatures with bones, we spin into life in the womb as a spiral embryo. We are conscious energy systems that whirl into configuration as other natural energies do along spiral lines of force, unfurling into life along an endless path of spiral transformation. The outer ear, or auricle, is one of our body's most obvious spirals. Along with curls of hair and spiral calyx, the mushroom-like vortex of our nostrils, our curling fists, and accumulating fingernails. Chinese acupuncturists, recognizing the principle that the part models the whole, map the entire spiral embryo onto the spiral ear. Thus, to treat any malady of the body, they'll first treat the corresponding part of the ear. Wow. A man is a whole encyclopedia of, quote, A man is the whole encyclopedia of facts. The creation of 1,000 forests is in one acorn, and Egypt, Greece, Rome, Gaul, Britain, America lie folded already in the first man. End quote. Ralph Waldo Emerson. And here we have another image of the outer ear and the inner ear, showing that they're both spirals. The shape of the cochlea, the organ that hears, most responds to how chromatic musical octaves appear when graphed as wavelengths. Each note is identical and directly above and below it on the spiral, but with one octave difference. Wow. Okay. Now, if you're looking at my screen, you may not be able to tell that there's like a black text box right in the middle that is obstructing the view of some of the words that I can't seem to move. So if that didn't make a whole lot of sense, it's because I improvised and assumed what some of the words were behind this text box. All right, let us finish. Only in this century, through the pioneering work of George von Bakisi, have we begun to understand how we hear by means of the inner ear, our spiral cochlea, which is Greek for snail shell. The cochlea of each ear is encased within a hard shell, so we're not overpowered by our own voice and filled with liquid. Around the central column is a hard rail of sensitive hairs, that decreases in thickness as it winds upward. Sound vibrations enter the whirlpool of the outer ear and tap at the cochlea's base, traveling in waves up and around the inner liquid. Each tone makes waves that break at a different point up the handrail according to the tone's wavelength. The resulting spiral turbulence of the breaking wave triggers the sensitive hairs at that location. The hairs then transduce the mechanical waves into unique electrical signals sent to the brain for interpretation. Wow. Quote, the man who has music in his soul will be in love with the loveliest. End quote. Plato. Humans hear approximately 10 octaves of sound in a cochlea of 2 3/4 spiral turns. The cochleae of other mammals have various numbers of turns and extended opportunities for finer waves to break, which explains why dogs and mice can hear frequencies higher than humans can perceive. The first recorded fact of mathematical physics attributed to Pythagoras is that musical notes can be expressed as mathematical ratios. See chapters 7 and 8. So when the notes of the chromatic musical octave are graphed according to their frequency of vibration as accumulating wavelengths, the graph forms the shape of the golden spiral. Oh, wow. Maybe we should try that one day. But I do want to point out here, we know that Pythagoras studied in Egypt. So I know that this is recorded first by Pythagoras, but and thus it's been attributed to him. We know that where the original work comes from. I think this would be a really neat thing to try. Is to graph. It says, so when the notes of the chromatic musical octave are graphed according to their frequency of vibration, So to me, it sounds like we would put the frequency of vibration on the x-axis, and we would put the notes of a chromatic musical octave on the y-axis. We would be graphing a golden spiral. And I know I've said this before that, maybe I would try some of these constructions and stuff like that. I need one of those document viewers. I think that would make this easier. I mean, I could use my pen and my tablet, and then I could do it on screen, but it's with a pencil in my hand using paper, I believe I could be more accurate. So I might look into how much a document viewer would cost me, but I think that would be a cool series to do. If that is something you would be interested in seeing, and if it's something that you would be interested in doing along with me, please comment and let me know. All right. So I'm going to actually highlight that because in that way I'll remember to come back to it. All right, let's keep going. Stretched up into 3 dimensions, it becomes the shape of the cochlea. Oh, wow. The organ that transduces sound to consciousness. Wow, how important that is. The cochlea and all nature's spirals can thus be seen as solid, liquid, gaseous, and fiery representations of the music that structures the cosmos. Hence why a musical note, the symbol of that is a spiral, huh? So in this image here, we have the cochlea of a cow, a guinea pig, a mouse, and a rat. And we see that they're spirals that register different levels of frequency. And then we have a quote by A. Kailis. Let me stop. Let me see if I can pull up the pronunciation. This is a Greek name. Aeschylus. He said, yea, waves, that o'er the interminable ocean wreath your crisped smiles. And that was from Aeschylus. Why do waves break in the cochlea where they do? And exactly how do curling waves rise from the sea and break onto the shore? Wow. This bit of wisdom belongs to the lore of surfing knowledge and what is referred to as shooting the curl or skimming through the wave's eye. Winds blowing onto the oceans cause its huge rolling waves. The sharp eye of the surfer notes the distance between successive rows of incoming waves, their wavelength. When the narrowing depth to the bottom below the wave is exactly half the wavelength between the waves, it will rise, push forward, and meet air resistance, causing it to curl around itself into its eye as an upright whirlpool to form a breaking wave of fine white bubbles. Why does it rise and curl at exactly half the wavelength? For this reason, you'll have to wait until chapter 8 and the discussion of the doubling principle of musical octaves. Not only does our whole body whirl into life as a spiral, but at its heart, our body's literal heart, is a dexterous, left-spinning spiral vortex. Sandwiched in the middle of its 3 layers is a sheet of contractor muscle in the shape of nature's familiar golden spiral. Like the sun at the center of our personal solar system, this living whirlpool, the size of your spiral fist, contracts and relaxes with great strength as a familiar lub-dub beat, sending blood rushing from its left ventricle chamber, a smaller spiral whirlpool within it, through 60,000 miles of blood vessels. The inner balance we seek, therefore, is already represented within the very fibers of our heart. Wow. Oh, so imagine, this makes me wonder if the heart, like if it's one piece of muscle rolled up into a spiral almost, is what I'm envisioning. But I don't think it's like that. Maybe inside, perhaps. For over a century, scientists have known that the properties of the 92 natural atoms and nearly a score of artificial ones repeat in cycles or periods, like the notes of the musical octave. Chemists have arranged this cyclic list of atoms into the well-known periodic table of elements, usually represented as a flat chart, wow, in rows and columns showing accumulations of electrons and protons with their atomic numbers from 1 to 92 and beyond. But the accumulation of electrons is continuous, so the periodic table would be more accurately depicted as a continuous spiral ribbon, a widening vortex rolling around itself like a seashell, cochlea, galaxy, and the musical scale. And there you have an image. And so I don't know if I spoke about this in a previous video, but the periodic table visually represented as a spiral is something that I've discussed on my podcast, especially around the time when Terrence Howard was trending. So if you listen to me on my other platforms, I did a couple of videos where I discussed a little bit about Terrence Howard and what he presented. Actually, I believe it was Oxford, or no, not Oxford. I believe it was Harvard, where he made this representation about basically about our perception of numbers. And his argument is in the very definition of what we've given certain numbers, like the number 1, the number 2, and 0. And I discussed this briefly also when I touch on 0 in this reading. But in his lectures and conversation, he discusses how we're not presented the periodic table in this visual form of a spiral. Can you imagine how much simpler our understanding of everything would be if we learned in this continuous holistic form, in this spiral form, instead of the linear forms that we're always learning in the straight lines versus the spirals? I'm going to quickly try to finish the rest of this page because I have to move to a different recording. The eye or center of gravity of the spiral map of matter falls along the column of inert gaseous gases, sometimes called noble gases because of their disdain for joining other elements in chemistry. They are the stable elements of the universe, balanced and complete unto themselves. The farther an atom falls on the periodic table from an inert gas, the more willing it is to seek completion by entering into a chemical relationship with other atoms. The closer the elements are to an inert gas, the less needy they are. A look at their atomic numbers shows the inert gases to have quantities of electrons very close to numbers from the Fibonacci sequence. If a spiraling strip of paper representing the periodic table whirlpool were marked off at Fibonacci lengths, the markings would fall on the approximate locations of the inert elements, its calm core. All the matter of the universe, represented by the periodic table of elements, resembles the spiral structure of smaller whirlpools that comprise this whole. Even the tiniest subatomic particles are vortices that reveal their spiral spin in bubble chambers. From the smallest particle, whirlpools, to the largest clusters of galaxies, each dances the same spiral step when coming into or dissolving out of manifestation. And in this image here, we have a single electron in a superheated bubble chamber. It leaves spiral trails as it loses energy within the chamber's magnetic field. The dance of spirals. When opposites clash, they resolve into spirals. What brings spirals about? In what conditions do they arise? Spirals are a sign of growth and transformation through resistance. While their sizes and substances vary widely, nature's spirals result from an interplay of opposites, the clash of the dyad. In its geometric construction, we saw the spiral arise at the interface, where rational scares endlessly chase their opposites in the transcendental golden rectangle. The interface, where hot meets cold, motion meets stillness, rising crosses the path of falling. Any of the dual throng will clash, but resolve into a dynamic spiral balance. Anytime opposites meet, even love and hatred, ignorance and wisdom find balance in the spiral dance of life. Quote, atom from atom yawns as far as earth from moon or star from star, end quote. Ralph Waldo Emerson. 4 types of spiral appear in nature: the whirlpool eddy, the wave, the mushroom vortex rings, and the vortex street. Actually, each of these is a variation on the fundamental whirlpool eddy. In Old Norse, edhai signify that which flows back around. Quote, the current that with gentle murmur glides, thou knowest, being stopped impatiently doth rage. End quote, William Shakespeare. All right, so let's look at the mushroom vortex first. This principle of opposites resisting and resolving into spirals is most easily understood as the mushroom vortex or vortex rings. You see them when you pour a moving liquid like milk into a motionless liquid like coffee or tea. The poured liquid meets resistance at its head and curls to the side. Each turn also meets resistance and curls further inward, repeating the cycle of meeting resistance and curling until the force dissipates and resistance disappears, leaving only the spiral path. The result appears in the form of a mushroom, which should be no surprise since a living mushroom is mostly water too, although it moves more slowly while displaying the same pattern as clashing liquids do. A reversal of mushroom vortex rings called backwater vortices forms behind a flat plate as water or air rushes by it. These vortices are studied in wind tunnel tests for cars, boats, racing bicycles, and airplanes, where the spirals are known as turbulence. If you've ever driven behind another vehicle on a dusty road, you may have noticed the dual mirror spirals trailing the moving car as it thrusts. All right, I'm going to go back a little bit. These vortices are studied in wind tunnel tests for cars, boats, racing bicycles, and airplanes, where the spirals are known as turbulence. If you've ever driven behind another vehicle on a dusty road, you may have noticed the dual mirror spirals trailing the moving car as it thrusts through the still air. Dust makes the spirals visible. We can see that the mirror spirals of the bivalve clamshell, as well as the creature within, and leaves display mushroom vortex rings. Only this dual golden spiral will allow each half to accumulate material on its lip and grow larger in mirror fashion without interfering with the other half's increase. I'm so sorry. All right, so we have an image here. Many leaves unfurl as mushroom vortices, which the ancients saw as nostrils of Pan, the spirit of the living forest. Then we have Greek iconic columns that symbolize the earth's subtle energy flowing through the temple. Wow. Meeting resistance at its head and rolling back as mushroom vortex rings. Oh, that's amazing. The mushroom vortex also describes the entry of twins in the womb who whirl into life together. Since each must not interfere with the other's growth, they develop as vortex rings, growing simultaneously larger while each maintains its unique center of gravity. Fraternal twins arise from two fertilized eggs, while identical twins are born of the same egg which has split. The spirals of fraternal and identical twins mirror each other differently. Wow, look at those spirals mirroring from different points. Oh, that's amazing. All right, let's move on to the vortex street. If you've ever been in a rowboat, you may have noticed whirlpools trailing behind the moving oar as it cuts through still water. Look closely and you'll see that the eddies are linked in a daisy chain of alternately opposite spinning whorls, known collectively as a vortex street. The phenomenon also occurs behind a still branch dipping into a moving stream. The central axis of a vortex street is a forward flowing zigzag from which the separate vortices emerge and balance. The central rhythm of alternating pulsation gives the whole street stability. Each spiral whirls independently balanced, and all spin in directions that support the direction of the central stream. To understand its rocking rhythm, think of how you break into a run, ride a bicycle, or a roller skate. You start off rocking side to side to achieve balance while thrusting forward. The more stable you become, the less polarized the less polarized and straighter the central axis becomes. This is how the archetype struggles with resistance to resolve itself into a state of dynamic balance. The moving wings of a jet plane split the still air and leave a vortex street of spiral turbulence behind them. Designers know that turbulence is a cause of drag on a vehicle, and they strive to reduce it. Flocks of flying birds take advantage of vortex streets in their familiar V formations. Only the lead bird must really work at flapping its wings. The others latch onto the. Okay, let me. 1 second. In an insulating, undulating spiral wake of turbulence trailing behind it. The others latch onto the undulating spiral wake of turbulence trailing behind it. They simply relax their wings and let the rolling waves move them up and down and forward. When the lead bird becomes tired, she falls back while another moves ahead to work at splitting the breeze for the others. Oh, so birds rely on vortex streets to make long distance flights easier. The sound made by the wind is a measure of its turbulence. The wings of some birds, like owls, are so perfectly designed that they produce virtually no turbulence and consequently no sound, enabling them to silently surprise their prey. Wow. That's why owls always look majestic when you, I mean, it's rare that you actually see them in the sky, but um, on a video or something, they just always they fly differently. It's interesting. Anything that splits the breeze from your finger to a tree or a building will cause an invisible vortex street to spread behind it. Due to the spin of the earth and its Coriolis effect, deflection of a moving object, low pressure storms north of the equator spin counterclockwise, mesh with high pressure spirals, which is fair weather, spinning clockwise. For the same reason, directions are reversed south of the equator. Wow. To see the Coriolis effect in miniature, that is, to see how the Earth's spin causes the atmosphere to spiral. Shoot a marble from the rim of a spinning record turntable toward its center, as if above the South Pole. The marble's path will curl as a golden spiral like the great winds. Observe a weather map and you'll see that high and low pressure spirals are linked as a daisy chain vortex street in bands around the planet. These jet streams, high altitude zagging winds, are the central lanes of great vortex streets meandering between whirling atmospheric spirals. Global weather is all meshed as such spirals. The Earth's atmosphere is one whole. Changes in weather patterns anywhere affect weather everywhere. And in the shift quote, and in the shifting of the winds and in the clouds that are pressed into service betwixt heaven and earth are signs to people who can understand. Quran, end quote. So that just made me think of something. Actually, this entire little page, it says anything that splits the breeze. So I mean, even in human beings, when our presence, our existence in physical form alone splits the breeze because we're an object taking up space that's in motion. And so we're always creating invisible vortexes of energy. Okay, so I'm like seeing this um, in an energetic way, not just in a physical way. And also, that quote just reinforced that because it made me think about every action you take. Every action you take, every time you speak to someone, don't speak to someone. Anytime you have an interaction with another being, it it's going to affect everything because that being is in interaction with something else, someone else who's in interrelation with something else, and it never stops. So everything that we do, everything that we are, everything that we say is like an inevitable cause that creates an effect that touches the entire world, that is ongoing and never ending. Wow. Sand dunes are carved by one side of the moving vortex street we simply call the wind. Similarly, ribbed sand at the shore is carved by the vortex street formed by the ebbing water clashing with the incoming wave. The jet stream is the central zigzag of a vortex street garlanding the planet. The spirals that spin at its sides are the meshed high and low pressure systems of our weather. Hmm. Wow. Differences in temperature, motion, direction, and moisture are resolved as vortex streets. Hot moisture rising above a cup of tea or hot soup meets resistance in the cooler, calmer air and curls around but continues to rise, forming a series of growing eddies meshing along a vortex street. A candle's flame wags back and forth as a flapping flag does in the breeze, and for the same reasons, both flame and flag move along the central zigzag current of the turbulence. Fly a kite with a long tail and observe the tail waggle as a vortex street, revealing the normally invisible rhythms of air. Why? Wow. So then we have this image here. It says high pressure gives us fair weather, low pressure gives us a storm north of the equator. And here we have a tornado results from a clashing of contrasting temperatures and of winds. It is the fastest wind on earth, approaching 300 miles an hour, capable of destroying the instruments designed to measure it. Wow. There's a spiral in a form we can see with our eyes. Plants as living turbulence. Believe one who knows, you will find more in woods than in books. Trees and stones will teach you that which you can never learn from masters. End quote. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. The structures of growing plants often resemble patterns of water and air in motion. And why shouldn't they? Plants are mostly water, although they move much more slowly, so it is appropriate that they express the natural forms of flowing water. An important part of our own process of expanding vision is to see plants differently, not as static things, but as dynamic processes, and to develop the ability to recognize plants in whole and part as living whirlpools, waves, mushroom rings, and vortex streets. We can learn to read nature's hydroglyphics. Now, I do want to insert something here because plants are mostly water, and so are human beings. We're almost made up of all water as well. So, what does this also tell us about ourselves? Back to the reading. Many plants, for example, obviously resemble upright vortex streets. The central stem corresponds with the zigzagging path flowing along the center of the vortex street. Each leaf, like a breaking wave, emerges alternately from the stem and curls around, its farthest tip turning back in search of the elusive eye. The architecture of a plant resembles the path of hot moisture rising into cooler, calmer, drier air. Its structure appears as a vortex street, giving us a glimpse of the invisible pattern of flowing energy. the lines of living force along which the plant cells manifest like a bubbling froth to define its shape. Spirals occur in response to the world's resistance. Wow. Spirals occur in response to the world's resistance. Plants and life in general are a kind of living turbulence. Living vortices, like liquid ones, have parts that model the whole. In larger plants and trees, we can see how each branch is a miniature, and I can't see the word, reemerging from the central trunk. Each ball, branch, twig, stem, and leaf is a vortex street and part of greater vortex streets. When you're out among plants in a field, park, or forest, practice seeing vegetation as green fountains spraying up leaves in a slow whirl, like a slowly revolving lawn sprinkler. Watch leaves cascade on all sides of their slowly flowing green stems and vines. View leaves from up close and see that each one is like a miniature river delta, a stream of flowing life depositing living green silt upon the web of a growing pentagon. In moments of insight, as you practice this way of looking at vegetation, you may see all these eddies simultaneously as vastly nested whirlpools within whirlpools of living turbulence. Such self-replication is the hallmark of nature's spiral growth grammar. In this last part, the pattern of the vortex street appears in the alternating placement of gripping suckers on an octopus's spiral tentacle, as well as the gripping tire treads. So those are the images there. So I'm going to end here actually, even though I didn't intend to have 5 parts in Pentad, it looks like I am. Because we're not finished, but there's only a little bit left. And we'll pick up here with the rhythms of manifestation and finish out this chapter on the next and final part of the chapter, Pentad of Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe by Michael Schneider. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for staying this long and being a part of this learning and this unfolding of consciousness, of a new level of consciousness when it comes to numbers, symbols, and the archetypes that they actually represent within our worlds, within our existence. And I look forward to all that will unfold from this new understanding, this new understanding. And I will see you on the next.